Representatives from the in and out campaigns in the EU referendum. Here in the studio is John Edward from Scotland, Stronger in Europe, and in London is Jack Montgomery, the Scottish spokesperson for Leave.EU. Thank you both for joining us. John Edward, is this the deal that will win the referendum for the Yes campaign?
Well, I think it's the deal he was always going to get. I don't think there's any great surprises. I think I was probably saying a few months ago that this is pretty much the bones it would be. This is the trigger for the referendum. The purposes of our campaign is not to talk about the minutiae of what the one political party has negotiated, but to talk about the overall campaign to stay in. But this is the trigger. We now get the referendum that a lot of people have been looking for a long time, so we're ready.
Jack Montgomery, what's your reaction to it?
Oh, it's pure snake oil. We were told we would get meaningful control over migration. We've got an emergency brake with someone else's hands on it. We were told that we would get an opt-out from ever closer union. We've got a sort of post-dated promise of something maybe in a treaty at some point in the future. We've not really got much of anything at all. We've not got an end to the supremacy of EU law over the laws of our own elected parliaments and assemblies. We've not got control back over our fishing waters. We've not got control back over much of anything at all. And I think people are going to see that.
John.
Well, that sounds like leaving the EU, and we're not campaigning to leave the EU. This was a negotiation that the Prime Minister and one political party put forward. Nobody ever talked about fishing rights or any of these sorts of things. What we're talking about is it's a bigger issue about the main strategies for staying in and for the world that we face ahead. This is not about going back to 1973 or 58. It's a case that will be bigger, better, stronger, safer in the situation we are at the moment. And pretending that somehow the document that came out from the Council today doesn't make it perfectly clear that there's going to be no ever close union, there's no move to political integration. It says it in black and white.
Jack, what for you then will be the key issues in the campaign?
The key issue really is that there's still a lack of full democratic control over decision-making over a whole host of issues while we're a member of the European Union. That does include things like fishing rights, but also includes things like trade deals, things like regulations, things like immigration again.
And John, what do you see as being the key points coming up?
Well, the key points for our side will be simply to say that we've got a mechanism here that makes us a safer and a stronger place, but also is to rebut some of the things you've just heard. I mean, the idea that there is simply no democratic control over regulations, over all these aspects. The whole point about the union is it's a union of law based on rules, so that any citizen in any country, anybody in Scotland, can challenge the things that are up there. And to say that somehow it's anti-democratic is to make a claim for the European Union that we wouldn't make of our own parliament.
Jack, do you want to respond to that?
Well, you can't make a challenge to European Union law, can you? I mean, once it's been laid down over Scots law, over UK law, that's it. There's no right of reservation, there's no veto. You're stuck with it. And we've seen a lot of damaging laws come down the pipeline in that way. Obscure things like the Clinical Trials Directive, which have halved the number of non-commercial clinical trials in this country, double the cost of cancer trials, and things that are more significant, like, for example, the total inability to make adequate provisions for public services, because we can't say how many people will be coming into the country from one year to the next.
So what about that point? That could be a key issue, John, the issue of immigration in Jack's.
Well, of course, a large part of the immigration argument in the United Kingdom is about quotas that the British government sets itself per month, and that's nothing to do with this issue or indeed with the European Union. The issue about free movement for workers, not for all people but for workers, is something that's long established and something that Britain has benefited from more than as much as other member states. And the idea that these individual citizens who come here and work...
wages for working people.
It's
been well known for a long time that uncontrolled migration has seen a lot of qualified professional people in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe being sucked out into this country, doing jobs, working in restaurants.
Let John answer that point.
The trouble is with all of this is it talks about people being sucked out, and it talks about laws being made against our thing. What people seem to forget is this is a union based on rules, and these rules apply to me, and these apply to everybody else in the European Union. So if I'm not happy with those rules, I can take them to court, as can anybody else. And it's not a matter of people being sucked from one country to another. It's a matter of personal choice, and that's a personal choice that I'm enthusiastic about, and I think Scotland can benefit from that in the future as it has in the past.
What do you think will be how will the campaign be characterised in Scotland, do you think, John?
Well, it'll be an interesting one for us here, obviously, because in terms of the political parties, you've got the five main parties at Holyrood, all the leaders all supporting staying in. You've got an election period right up till May that will be looking at other issues, as Kezia Dugdale has just said, and same in Wales, same in London. But for us, I think it's simply a case that, you know, we've had a discussion recently in Scotland about where power lies. We recognise that different levers of power are pulled and exercised in different parts and different levels. Edinburgh, London, Brussels, some in Washington, some in Geneva, wherever. And we're relaxed with that. The point is recognising where the power lies and recognising what we have to do to use it. And I'm entirely comfortable that we can make the case that people know where to go to make those cases.
And finally, and briefly on that point, Jack, how do you see it being characterised in Scotland?
I think that there will be a big question over where those levers should lie. How many levers should be in Brussels? How many should be in Geneva with important global bodies and what have you? Which ones should be in Westminster? Which ones should be in Holyrood? And a lot of them, which should be in this country, are not going to be here as long as they're in the European Union.
We'll be coming back to this over the next few months, I'm sure. But thank you both for joining.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.